Hello, everybody. It's me, Andy,
Son,
and this is Commander's Brew.
this week, Prime Speaker Zegana.
Hey, everybody. It's episode 138 of the Commander's Brew podcast. Welcome back. We're all here now, ready to go.
RTG. Ready to
RTG.
go.
Ready to go.
That's a good one. I like that one.
RTG?
Yeah.
Let's start that up.
Yeah, like, hey man, are we going out? RTG.
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 It sounds like you're saying RTG. Like, who's RTG? RTG's here. He's ready to go.
Yo,
None of us are,
RTG.
though. Artie's ready. Artie Graham.
Yeah.
He's ready to go.
Art Graham.
I
like it.
What's the doctor's name in Field of Dreams? Doc.
There's a
Doc Graham.
Oh,
Archie.
is that James
It's
Earl
Archie.
Jones?
Wow, that was really close. Wow.
Wow.
No, James Earl Jones played Terrence Mann, who was the
Was he a ghost or a human?
he was a real person. Who wrote Catcher in the Rye again? JT Salinger. JD Salinger. That's who it is in the book. But I guess in the movie they couldn't use JD Salinger's name, so they had to change it to be a fake person named Terrence Mann. But in the book, Shoeless Joe, he goes and talks to JD Salinger.
Wait, JD Salinger isn't a ghost? Or he is a ghost?
No, that's Doc Graham.
Doc Graham. I'm totally lost here.
You're thinking about Doc Graham. Listen, go watch Field of Dreams right now.
Okay, here's
Brush
what I
up
do know.
on it real quick. We'll have a quick edit cut right now, and then we're going to come back, and Sean's going to know everything about Field of Dreams. It's going to be very fresh in his mind. Here we go. Cutting. And we're back, and it's 2.5 hours later, and Sean, you've watched Field of Dreams, right?
Yeah, I think I love it. I was inspired by it. I do worry that what if there is only water in the world and we have to fight for gasoline?
Oh, no.
What?
No, man.
Kevin Costner, right?
Yeah,
Field of
Kevin
Dreams?
Costner. Yes, Kevin Costner, Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner, Field of
I
Dreams.
watched it.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
sounds like you watched Waterworld.
Oh no.
Oh, no, yeah. Waterworld, right? The world was made of
Okay.
water, Dennis Hopper, jet skis. There's no real reason why any of them are doing anything in the movie.
Okay, give me another shot.
Okay.
Do you have 2.5 hours more, Andy?
I do. It's getting later, but you know what? Today, luckily, is a free day for me. Okay, here we go. Cutting away. And we're back. Okay, now you watched Field of Dreams.
Yep. It's a sports movie.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Sports movie.
Baseball.
Starring Kevin Costner.
Baseball, right?
Not exactly. Baseball, the one where he coaches the running team, the underdog running team. No one thinks they can do it, and then they win.
Okay, now I'm like, did he watch Cool Runnings? Or
No.
because that's a
No.
bobsled team.
No, I mean, I feel it's. I remember Field of Dreams being older, but this movie came out a couple of years ago by Disney, and he's a running coach. He coaches an underdog team.
Kevin Costner?
Yeah.
Now I just don't know what you're talking about.
You know what? Okay. All bits aside, that movie was a treat. A real
What
treat.
movie are you talking about?
I'm looking it up now.
I thought you were
I'm looking
at first.
it
I
up.
thought you were gonna do Bull Durham, which I was like, okay,
I should have
that's a good joke because it's a baseball movie, and we could have
Yeah.
said everything's the same except that. Then you're like, and Susan Sarandon,
Yeah.
and then I thought you were gonna say Tin Cup because it's another sports movie that Kevin Costner's in.
Yeah.
That's not baseball.
I could have looked it up more.
Behind the scenes on this bit, this is what you're listening
What's
to right
that
now.
movie? I gotta say, I watched it on Netflix a year ago or something like that, as on a whim, because I like sports movies, I like underdog movies, and it was like just the sweetest. He moves to like a small town to coach a running team.
A running team? What's a running
like a
team?
He invents he like goes to he develops a cross country team.
Oh my god! Really? Okay.
It's I think Disney produced it. It was just a feel good movie. It was great.
Oh, I know that movie. It's the one he goes across the country, right?
He moves his family
across the country, and it's like he's like a mailman or whatever, and it's like the apocalypse happened, and now he has to deliver the mail everywhere, right? And like it's like kind of important that he right? That's it, right? That's the movie we're talking about.
Stamp the bit. Andy wins.
Thank you, The Postman. Terrible,
Bad.
terrible movie as well,
Put a
apparently.
stamp on the bit.
Great. Yeah, okay.
You fooled me, Hull.
I gotcha. Okay. I mean, Kevin Costner, listen, he had a dip there for a while where he couldn't get in anything good. But guess what? He's back in a big way. He was in Hidden Figures. That movie's great.
Yeah.
He was in this unnamed movie Sean apparently saw that apparently was good.
Which was a treat. It was a real treat.
Is it called Molly's Game?
No, that's about poker.
Yeah. Okay. Then, well, I don't know.
I don't know why I can't find it on the internet.
McFarland, USA. That's what it is. McFarland.
What?
McFarland, USA.
That's it. Yeah, because it's yeah. That's the one. And it's like he moves his family over there, and he's such a passionate coach, and he really wants them to succeed. But oh man, it's just great. I love an underdog story. I just love it.
Great. Okay. Well, anyways, guys, whether it's Field of Dreams or McFarland, USA, none of that matters because we're here for episode 138 of the Commander's Brew podcast.
Brew it. We will play.
If you brew it, we will play. And that is true also for our upcoming YouTube series where if we brew it, we will play, called Commander's Brew or Commander's Brawl, which we will be launching a Kickstarter on April 3rd. So if anybody wants to get in on the ground floor and help us make that show happen, you'll be able to do that on April 3rd. And in the meantime, you can help out just by sharing with your friends and talking about it. And, telling us you're interested and all that kind of stuff. It'll be fun.
Yeah, share the info about that Kickstarter. That's exciting for us. And share info about this podcast, too, to your regular Commander community, even if you play in a bit more competitive metas, because, we got some fun deck ideas for everybody. We're going to brew, although we are going to give ourselves the restriction of a $50 brew. We're going to do this budget style. And we're brought to you by some very important people, our patrons. We got to thank people who support us through patreon.com. Listeners like you. We want to thank Ultimate Guard, Sleeves and Boxes. We want to thank the Wizards Tower, wizardtower.com. Let us hear an ad from them now.
I am a vampire from Exile. We're sort of Spanish, but also Transylvanian, so it's a very hard accent to do. But I'm going to say that we're in the colors of black and the colors of white. So you might think, are we good or are we evil? But I would ask you, what is morality? Because good to you might be bad to me and vice versa. Like, is it bad if I have to suck some blood to feed my family? You humans always talk about that way about stealing bread, how that's okay. So like maybe this is okay. Anyway, morality aside, we can all agree that it's a good deal if you buy Magic singles from the Wizard Tower, wizardtower.com, and if you use coupon code ILOVEBREWS, then you get an extra 5% off, and if you order $15 worth, you get free shipping to Canada for free, and then 3% kickback. It's a good deal. Anyway, I have to go murder 1 million people. Okay, bye.
A very interesting question up until the end. Then I think it was clear he's a bad person.
I mean, not all vampires are bad.
That's true.
Soren's a vampire. He's a good guy, kind of.
Is Soren a good guy?
He's kind of a good guy.
Well, I mean, this is the whole crux of the ad. Like, how do you define it?
He's pretty good, although Nahiri was pretty mad at him. But then she was the villain of that story.
Are you a good guy if you defeat a bad guy?
Not necessarily. I remember when Skeletor and He-Man teamed up to fight Hordak. That doesn't make Skeletor a good guy. Simple as that.
That's a case closed.
Case
Put
closed.
another stamp on it.
Yep, definition achieved.
Debate champ.
Yep,
Andy
there
Hall.
it is. I just remember that one time, so guess what?
I would love to be on the debate team with you.
So guess what is how I end all of my arguments.
So guess what?
That's awful. Okay. Oh, did you play any Commander this week? Did we get into anything fun this week?
Yes. I played. I met with Alistair and Rob, and I played brand new edition. I played my Warp World Great Aurora deck that we brewed on the
Ooh,
podcast a
achievement
few weeks ago.
unlocked.
Achievement unlocked. I made a couple of tweaks to it, but my favorite play of the game was Alistair was running his giant sea monster deck,
Mm-hmm.
and he resolved a Trench Gorger, and which is the creature that lets you take
Yeah.
all the lands out of your deck, and he removed all the lands remaining in his deck. So he had a few lands on the battlefield, as much as he felt he needed, and he was just like, I'm just gonna do this creature thing. And very shortly thereafter, I was able to warp world. So everybody shuffles everything and puts it back
Oh
out, but he
no.
has almost no
He
more
had no
lands.
lands. Oh no. What happened?
Needless to say, I mean, so naturally he's going to hit a couple of giant sea monsters. So it
Yeah.
was very dicey there for a
I was
moment.
gonna
But
say, like, but maybe also he just wins because of that, because he gets all gas. Like,
I know at the time I was like, "Ooh, this is the perfect warp world." But then I was like, "Oh no." Fortunately, though, my deck had more things to shuffle, so just by numbers, my deck got the advantage there.
wow, yeah. I mean, if you like do that and then drop like a propaganda or something, he can just never attack you.
Ever.
That would be amazing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
We did a stream. We played some Masters 25. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Cool deck too.
It was a cool deck. We had like a Golgari Sultai thing happening. I tell you, I think it's a good draft format.
I think so too. I've been watching a bunch on
Yeah, me
stream.
too. And I think it's a very good draft format. I am just so bummed out that it costs as much as it does. And I think that's kind of the thing we're hearing a lot from across the various places in the community is everyone's kind of like, why is this $10 a pack?
Okay, why is it $10 a pack? Fine. But the more egregious question is why is it why does it cost the same to Phantom than it does a normal draft?
It costs the same to Phantom as it does a cube, which I guess is the going rate.
That's the standard. I don't know. It just seems so bizarre. Like that seems like a lot of money to pay for that experience.
Think about this. Would you pay any other game in any other game? Would you pay $10 just to play for like 2 to 3 hours?
Never. Can you imagine? Can you imagine there's a game that's just like, oh, this is a free to play game, but it's all locked up. But if you want to play, you can unlock a day pass for $10.
No chance.
No way. No way.
No chance.
But somehow we let them get away with it.
Yeah, we do, don't we? It's weird.
Because we want the experience, right? It's hard to get that power cube experience anywhere else.
It is. It's tough, and it's okay. So here's the other thing. So I was this week. I actually, inspired by an episode of Limited Resources, I started listening to some other Cube podcasts, and I really got into thinking about Cube again. And
I saw your tweet. I'm very excited about this.
yeah. So then I started thinking about like because Sean has a cube. We haven't played that cube in a long time, and I have been itching to play cube in person.
We just got to pull the trigger.
Months. Like I've really been pushing for it. I really want to. We also Butler and I maintain a peasant cube, which is a common and uncommon cube, which is a really good draft experience. It needs to be updated a little bit, ours, but like I do really like it. And I listened to an episode of a podcast called Pick One Pack One, I think it is. It's like a cube podcast. Oh, yeah. Those guys really know they really know their stuff. I gotta say, and this is no shade, I just think that like they should need to tighten it up a little bit because the episode I was listening to, they're eating on it, and it's like it's disgusting. Oh. It's honestly disgusting to hear somebody eat into a microphone. So, and it's not even really a microphone. Anyways, whatever. Check out the podcast. You might not like it. I had to turn it off because I couldn't listen to that one episode anymore.
Oh no!
However, the stuff they're definitely smart players. They know what they're talking about. They know their cube, like definitely, right? So, whatever. Anyways, So the stuff they were talking about was really great. So they were talking about a common uncommon cube, and I was like, hey, we have one of those. And they were saying how good it is, and I was like, oh yeah, those are a lot of the same things we have in our cube. That's great. Then I started thinking, and I was like, what if I had my own cube? Because first of all, I was like sitting there listening to Marshall at LSV talk about how Ryan Spain has his own he maintains a version of the vintage cube online. He has offline, like in paper. And I was like, whoa, that's like, that must be something to see. You know what I mean? Like a person break out this cube and it's got like just the most iconic and expensive and crazy cards on all of Magic's history. And I was like, I'm going to do that. One day I'm going to have that. And it's like, that's a lifelong project. And then I was like, the next day I woke up and I was like, I'm not going to do that. What are you talking about? That's like $1 million. I don't have that kind of money. So then I was like, what would I do? And then I was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to do a cube that is not restricted by rarity or anything, but is all about the greatest draft experiences that Magic's had. So it itself is a limited format. So why not take all the best aspects of previous limited formats and try and make them all built into one cube? So it's like the limited All-Stars cube. I think it's a good idea. It's a matter of figuring out which archetypes to use. And there were some I just couldn't even really think of. Like there's some easy ones like white blue is flying, but it's like that's kind of too simple. Like I wanted to know if there's any really cool, other white blue synergies that have happened, in Magic's history. So I put that tweet out there. So if any of you know, or if any of you have any favorite draft archetypes, sometimes they're too narrow. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they're like parasitic or too narrow to put into a cube, but sometimes they're just really great. So yeah, let us know any good ones you know of or you remember, especially from older formats. Like I can do a decent job of remembering the recent stuff, but like, did you guys play in Tempest? Did anyone play in Ice Age? Like what were the cool draft things back then? I tried looking, like I was looking at those old sets and I tried to like piece it together what it is. And sometimes you can figure it out. It's like, oh, this was all morph, or this was all, whatever. But yeah, if you remember anything, let me know. Holler at your boy.
That sounds super fun. Yeah, but please tweet that. And then I still have the list. I've brainstormed a mono red cube that I was excited about just to and it was all about finding any excuse to play that card that like ends the current turn, but you lose on your next turn.
That was the whole inspiration for it.
That was kind of like the only way this is ever gonna get played is in a mono red cube where like all that matters.
Awesome. There's on Forge right now. They've really upped their cube game. If you go into draft one of the cubes on one of the recent versions of Forge, there's like, I don't know, 30, 40 cubes in there now.
Wow.
And a lot of them are like versions of the Magic Online Vintage Cube or the Legacy Cube or Modern Cube or whatever. But then there's a lot of ones from the community. Like there's a mono blue cube in there.
Ooh, that sounds like my worst nightmare.
A peasant cube in there. There's a pauper cube. There's a lot of stuff in there. It's really interesting. They've really upped their game.
Can you imagine the mono white cube? No one's drawn cards or ramping. They're just like playing creatures with vigilance.
It's all just tokens with tokens and creatures with vigilance. Just everyone's blocks everything. It's brutal. Terrible.
Pick one. Wall of Omens. Yes.
I mean, I'm interested to know what the mono blue cube is like. I haven't played it, but I was like,
all counter spells probably.
I think it's like it's got to be different than that. I mean, I'm sure there's a few counter spells in there, but holy.
Well, I mean, the mono red cube was interesting to try to come up with a few archetypes in there, right? Like I tried to do like artifacts matter and like spells, instants and sorceries matter, and what is it? Goblin tribal, dragon tribal, and I think just like, yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if the mono red cube would just evolve into everybody trying to draft the mono red deck, like there's the burn deck.
Well, I tried to design it. I mean, we could go so deep on this. I tried to design it so that it's not all like lightning bolt is of course in there, but I tried to be very mindful of like I didn't include the best instant speed removal because then there's no point in doing creature decks because every creature just dies to everything. So like a lot of the removal is like sorcery speed if it does more damage, or instant speed if it does less damage. So I really paid attention to try to like make that work. So you could eventually get a dragon out if you like brew the right way.
Interesting. So all of this, of course, appeals to the deck building side of Commander. So like I know that that's one of my favorite parts of Commander is like getting a Commander, building around a theme and all that kind of stuff. So if you're a Commander player there and you haven't done a lot of cubing, or you haven't thought about cube, like it really scratches that itch for sure, and it's really fun to think about. And start to put together and think of like you're building multiple archetypes within one gigantic deck, kind of, right? Like that's kind of what it is. But it's really great. Anyways, let's get into the main topic here today.
Yeah.
Let's get into this deck.
This archetype, this Simic archetype. Andy took the lead on this one, and we're brewing around Prime Speaker Zegana, who is 2 green, green, blue, blue, legendary merfolk wizard, starts as a 1/1, but Prime Speaker Zegana enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the greatest power among other creatures you control. When Prime Speaker Zegana enters the battlefield, draw cards equal to its power.
Yes. So this is one of the first legendaries I ever had, and was very excited to build a deck around this for Commander. So this is very much a throwback episode. This is a deck that I had, that I changed it into a Riku deck, and then didn't like it anymore, and then took it apart. So now, so I'm like, oh man, why did I ever change it? Like I should have just kept it as is. So I'm thinking about going back and building it again, which is why I was like, what a great topic for the show. We can revisit my old deck, but update it, right? And I did have to make some budget cuts, obviously, from what the deck really was when I really had it, but not that many. I was actually kind of surprised at the and most of them were like cards that were like good utility cards that are just good for Commander. Like Relic of Progenitus was in this deck, but that's like a $4 card now or something like that. So that's not like super expensive or anything, but you know, for the purposes of the show, we can't just. I'm not going to run a $4 card that is very situational. But we still have Graveyard Hate in here. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Prime Speaker Zegana, all budgeted up and updated with current cards, as well as some of those old classics that I had in there. So looking at this card, to me, she's a really great Commander for new players. I would definitely recommend Prime Speaker Zegana for any newer players playing Commander, because she has such a blueprint of how to build her right on the card, right? She says when she enters the battlefield, she puts +1/+1 counters, and then it cares about power, and then draws cards, right? Those are the three things this deck is built around. It's ETB effects, +1/+1 counters, and drawing cards, taking the advantages of all of those things that Zegana does. So right on the card, you've got, okay, I'm going to do these three things. You could even focus on even probably just one of those things if you really wanted, but I always like to have multiple ways to like attack, right? And multiple ways to be effective. So Zegana's great for that. Since she has that built-in card draw, newer players, like I look back at my really old list of this and was like, man, I don't have nearly enough ramp in this deck, but I did have enough card draw because I was building it, with it as a like an angle of the deck. So I kind of was fine. I didn't need to have so much ramp in the deck because like you just drew a million cards like on every turn, kind of, because of the way the deck was built. So, but I definitely do need more ramp in this deck, and so I needed to shore up some of those weaknesses. But as a newer player, you'll come in and go, you might figure that out for yourself because you're drawing so many cards. I know one of the things I did when I first started playing was I never included enough ramp in card draw. But this is the first deck where I did have enough card draw anyways. So that was really good. It was like a real learning moment, playing this deck.
Can I share a thing that you inadvertently taught me by playing this deck?
What is it?
In a deck that wants to draw a lot of cards, play your lands later, because if you draw 15 or 16 cards and one of those is a reliquary tower, you're going to want to play that as your land. I've burned myself before where I play my land so I can draw one extra card for that X spell or whatever, and then I draw a reliquary tower. I was like, oh no, I should have played this as my land.
Yeah, like I drew 15 cards, and also I drew a reliquary tower and can't play it this turn. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that I definitely learned that playing this deck. Spoiler alert, I did have to pull reliquary tower out of this deck because it's too expensive for the purposes
How much
of this.
is that now?
It's the same thing. It's like $4, $3 or $4.
Oh, Wizards, please.
I mean, they do a decent job of reprinting that. And honestly, like if you're, to break the budget, you definitely want that card in this deck, obviously. Anything that says no maximum hand size, that is a reasonable card you want in this deck for sure. Because sometimes I've drawn myself out with this deck before, I remember. But anyways, let's talk about what kind of cards are in here. So first, let's talk about that card draw. Let's talk about the kind of cards we want. And you'll notice the three main categories that I talked about are also represented in, like, it's so pervasive. Like everything is kind of on every card. It's neat. So let's start off with a big boy, Sphinx of Megosi. 3 blue for a flying Sphinx, a 6/6, and it says 2 and a blue. Draw a card, then put a +1/+1 counter on Sphinx of Megosi. So right here we have double synergy with drawing cards and placing counters on the creature. This card is perfect and very much built for Prime Speaker Zegana.
Cool.
You like this card?
You know what? I was trying to look up another. There's another card it made me think of that I was trying to look up so I could mention, but I'll have it by the end of the section.
Okay,
segment.
you read this.
I think Sphinx of Megosi is so good because of its mana sync ability.
Yes.
Right. Mana syncs. I think we don't often think about them as a category, right? We think of card draw, we think of removal, we think of ramp, but I do think it's important I'm guilty of not practicing what I preach, but I think we ought to have, everyone says, put in a sack outlet or two. I think you ought to put in 1 or 2 mana sinks because there's nothing worse than not, holding up some mana for a specific purpose that you don't need and then wasting that mana. Like in Commander, if you think about it, like we do bonkers things all the time. So like they who spend the most mana could potentially wins, right?
Sphinx of Megosi is so great because it's a mana sink that then draws you cards, which is what gives you things to do next time so that you don't need a mana sink. But you know what I mean? It's so good.
So good.
Very good.
Next I want to talk about Fathom Mage.
Okay, hang on. You read this and I need to go get a glass of water. Okay, go.
Okay. Oh, how fast does that take to get a glass of water? So Fathom Mage is 2 green, blue for a human wizard with Evolve. So the way Evolve works is whenever a creature that is bigger than it enters the battlefield, either power or toughness, doesn't have to be both, this creature gets a +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever a +1/+1 counter is placed on Fathom Mage, you may draw a card. So already, anytime we play a bigger creature, we get to draw a card. And if we have any other ways of throwing counters around, that also reads draw a card. Fathom Mage just kind of tacks the draw a card clause onto a lot of other cards, which is great.
Fathom Mage could have easily been a star of the deck, actually. And it's funny because this deck, when I first built this deck, it was like right when I basically first started playing Magic, right around Return to Ravnica. So the Simic Evolve, this was in Gatecrash, I guess, right? Simic? Yeah. Simic Evolve deck was like the was like that was like a draft deck. So I had all these Evolve cards, and then I got a Prime Speaker Zegana. So I built it as kind of an Evolve deck at first, which I think is so probably very typical of a lot of people's first Commander decks when they're drafting and stuff. But Fathom Mage is one that actually made the cut after many versions of the deck. After probably taking out most of the Evolve stuff. But Fathom Mage is great because, like Sean said, anytime you can just put a counter on her with anyone else, any other reason, it doesn't need to be from the Evolve trigger. Anytime a counter is placed on her, you draw a card. And if you place 6 counters on it, you draw 6 cards. So this she can get really out of hand and get really big. Also, there's a lot of so we're talking about ETB triggers in this deck. There's ways to blink and flicker your creatures as well, right? So it could get to the point where you don't have ways to just stack counters on her, but you can get more Evolve triggers out of her if she just wasn't so big. Well, you can just flicker or blink her, get her back onto the battlefield as a 1/1, and now she'll keep now cantripping those bigger creatures when you play them.
Yeah.
Strong card.
Strong card.
Yeah.
Strong card.
Next one is Soul of the Harvest. 4 green. It's a 6/6 elemental with trample, and says whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So, like I said, there's ETB triggers, there's blink and flicker and stuff like that in this deck, and Soul of the Harvest takes advantage not only when you just cast your creatures, but now when they get blinked and stuff like that too. You'll draw lots of cards off this guy.
Huge. And then another classic draw is Muldrifter. 4 and a blue, flying. When Muldrifter enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, 2/2 elemental. But here's the key about Muldrifter. It's got 2 and a blue for evoke. So Evoke's very clever mechanic, right? Because if you evoke it, then you have to sacrifice it when it enters the battlefield. So you will still get the ETB trigger, and another trigger will be sitting there on the stack that says you have to exile, you have to sacrifice me. But you can still do all kinds of things before that sacrifice me trigger resolves. Yeah. So if you have a way of blinking, you can blink Muldrifter before its sack trigger resolves, get another card draw ETB, and only this Muldrifter is here to stay.
Yep, absolutely. I was just thinking about this, and I was like, you put Muldrifter down and you bond it with like Deadeye Navigator or something, right?
Yeah.
You can do that with the Evolve trigger if you have 5 mana.
And then the 2 extra mana from the Deadeye Navigator trigger is the full price of Muldrifter, only now you've drawn 4 cards and you get to keep it around.
Yeah, that's where the value comes in, because you're like, oh, but it's the same amount, and but you're drawing 2 more cards, which is great. So Muldrifter works so well in this deck, and basically every deck you've ever thought of that can have it.
Yep.
Just a true classic.
Like, oh man, like it's so like this color pair has so many classics.
Yeah, I mean it's arguably the best color pair in Commander because it does the 2 most important things in the format, which is ramp and card draw. So it's going to be very good at that. And this deck, like I said, being built around card draw really smooths out everything that you can do in this deck. Like if you're struggling for either mana or gas or whatever, you can just evoke Muldrifter on turn 3, draw 2 cards. Like that's just an option you have, right? And it's a fine option when you need it. Obviously, you'd like to abuse it for later, but you've got other stuff you can abuse, like some of these things coming up here. So one of the things that this deck does really well also is make big creatures, right? Zegana wants big creatures, and the way that she makes herself big and the way that we're going to make other creatures big is through +1/+1 counters. It's such great synergy. This deck has so much synergy running through it. It's insane. One great card, excellent card, I think I need to start putting in more decks. I have it in a couple, but I got to put it in more, is Scavenging Ooze. 1 and a green for a 2/2. And it says pay green, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Scavenging Ooze, and you gain a life. I actually often forget about the fact that you gain a life, but this is just, you need Graveyard Hate. Spot Graveyard Hate is obviously like maybe not as good as just Mass Graveyard Hate, but it can still be very effective and be a real big deterrent, right? So if a player out there's got a Reanimator deck or whatever, and they want to like just grab one creature, or like they've got a creature that's like, it does it like Hell's Caretaker or something, and they want to, okay, I'll do this on my upkeep. And then you just pay 1 green to stop it. Like, they're just not going to do it. They're just going to be like, well, how do I get rid of the Scavenging Ooze before I do anything? And that gives you enough time against those decks to set up a lot of the times, or just to get your protection going, right? Maybe you get that Swiftfoot Boots down or something like that to be able to protect it. But Scavenging Ooze is great, and it's very easy for this card to get just humongous.
It's great. And again, this is a bit of a mana sink in a way, right? Like,
it is.
You got nothing to do at the end of the turn. I suppose you always got to worry about instant speed graveyard shenanigans, because they can out-race you on that.
Yeah, there's not that many of those, though.
There's not that many. I think you probably save, and you know what you're up against. So if you're up against a Carador, for example, you're just like, oh, your end step? Cool. I'm going to just exile the best creatures you have for as many green mana as I have.
Exactly. And like, obviously, if they have like a Scarab God or something, that they can do that kind of stuff at instant speed. So
Yeah,
you'll
it'll
know
be
what
an
you're up
onboard
against.
trick. Yeah.
This next one is just recently got reprinted in Masters 25, and actually it hit me with a bit of nostalgia for this deck.
Yeah, lore scale coatl.
Coatl.
It's 1 green blue for a snake, which is 2/2. But whenever you draw a card, you may put a +1/+1 encounter on lore scale coatl.
Is it? I thought it's coatl. I've heard it's pronounced
I don't
coatl.
know.
I've heard it pronounced coatl. Anyways, who cares? It's a snake.
I don't like it. Yeah.
It's a snake. That's all you need to know.
It's a big snake that's only going to get bigger. And guess what? This deck draws a lot of cards, so this card will get very big.
This card just gets very big just from like draw steps, kind of, because it's not an intimidating card until it has like 10 counters on it, and then people start caring about it. But by that point, you've got some other things down that, it's like it might not even be the biggest thing you have. But lore scale coatl is crazy. If you can get this guy down and then cast Zegana and have another creature on board, it's ugly.
The cards you draw from Zegana make this even bigger.
Yeah, it's wild. It's very, very fun. This guy's great.
Yeah.
It is kind of a low impact card, but in this deck it can get so big so fast that people just have to deal with it. And it's a thing where like you can draw this really late in the game, play it for only 3 mana, and then do something where you draw cards and then still have like mana to play with, right? Because it's so cheap. Next, this is a new one, Herald of Secrets streams. 3 and a blue.
Amazing.
For a 2/3 Merfolk Warrior, and it says creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. Well, that is an awful lot of the creatures in this deck, if not all of them. No, it's,
oh my gosh,
because we can move counters around, and there's lots of silly things we can do with counters. So, yeah,
you might as well try to stop the waterfall.
Right? Exactly.
Text.
That's the flavor text, and that is basically how your opponents are going to feel when all of your creatures have +1/+1 counters on them, and they're coming at you because they're going to be big.
Yeah, they're going to be big. Oh my goodness. This is the kind of card that comes down. It's like, does anyone have an answer to it? Oh no? Okay, then you're dead.
This is also part of the like philosophy of even if there's a card that even only synergizes with just your commander, then oftentimes it's worth putting in the deck. And even if nothing else had +1/+1 counters on it, and let's say it was also hard to make things unblockable, which it isn't really. But this what Herald of Secret Streams does is it makes Zegana unblockable, and if you can get Zegana to be big enough, she can sometimes be like a 1 or 2 hit kill. So
very reasonable.
Very reasonable. Talking about that commander damage, if you listen to the latest episode of Command Zone, the Commander Summit, we got into that topic of whether or not
very interesting.
They should get rid of it.
Very interesting.
I'm actually kind of surprised to see how many people were on like our side of like, no, leave it, it's fine.
You were surprised?
Yeah, I kind of thought more people would be like, yeah, get rid of it, no one uses it.
No, I mean my gut is keep it, and I expect most people to be on that side.
Yeah, I say it again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not broken. Yeah. It's great. It's fine. It's a thing our format has that's interesting and something you have to think about, and I like it a lot. Anyways, so Herald Secret Streams is good that's another reason why that card might actually be even better with that rule. So, what's this next one here?
Let's talk about Ivy Lane Denizen, 3 and a green for an elf warrior. Ivy Lane Denizen starts as a 2/3 and says, whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So, this is not cast. This is enter the battlefield. This counts for tokens. This counts as any green creature. You get to throw a +1/+1 counter anywhere. Do you need to draw a card? Put that on Fathom Mage. Are you working on Zegana being huge for an unblockable kill? Throw those counters on her for that big kill. This is just such flexibility on a card. And that's all.
It's a wacky ability to throw on a common,
It's a common, that's right.
And also though, here's the thing, like it wasn't broken in limited or even remotely played in standard or anything like that. So like
it feels like it should be broken.
To me, I know, right? To me, this is like almost a perfect Magic card because it's low enough impact to be put at common in a draft set, but then you put it in the right deck in Commander, and it's part of an infinite combo that will just win you the game, right? Like this ability is so good, but also seemingly low impact that you can pair this up with one or two other cards and have an infinite combo. That gives you like infinite mana sometimes. Lets you draw infinite cards. It can do a lot of things. So Ivy Lane Denizens, I think there is there in this deck. I don't think there is actually in this deck any of the infinite combos. But put this guy in Marith, and you've got some crazy shenanigans happening.
Yeah.
But I love this card, and it's very helpful for spreading around those +1/+1 counters and putting them on other things, making them unblockable and so on.
Absolutely.
So before we get into the cards that have the ETB abilities, I wanted to quickly talk about the ways that we're going to bounce, blink, flicker, whatever you want to say, the various ETB creatures in the deck. So one of them is just a general powerhouse of a card in Magic. It's Capsize. 1 blue. It's an instant. Return target permanent to its owner's hand, and it has buyback for 3 generic. So this costs 6 mana in total to just bounce something back to its owner's hand. Obviously, this is one of those things where, hey, if I made infinite mana, a lot of times you can just capsize every single thing on the board and just win the game that way. I know that's a thing that some people do. This is more of a fair version of Capsize in this deck. Like I said, I don't think there are ways to make infinite mana in this deck. Capsize generally will just come in. It's an excellent way to like handle something that's very hard to deal with sometimes, right? Like can't be destroyed, can't be whatever. It's like, okay, fine, I'll just bounce it every turn. Or just again hit your own things. It's just a nice. It's actually kind of like a toolboxy kind of utility style card. It's not the best. It's not the most efficient way to bounce your own stuff or anything else. But it's just going to always be there for you to use if you have it.
Yeah. You don't have to buy it back,
Right.
but if you have the mana, that's an amazing option for you. You know, speaking of mana sinks, any instant with buyback is sort of a mana sink if if it's the ability you care about. Yeah. Cool. Next one for this purpose is Washout. 3 and a blue for a sorcery. Return all permanents of the color of your choice to their owner's hands. Very interesting card. Whenever this card is in our meta in a few decks, and it always performs. It always performs well. Sure. I mean, especially in a deck where you want your own stuff to bounce to, right? Like the dream situation where, like this will never be a Cyclonic Rift where all their stuff goes back and your stuff stays, but that's fine. That's fine. We want to cast our stuff.
Yeah.
I've never seen the scenario where the caster has no possible choices that won't wreck their board but leave everyone else's board intact.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Well, of course that never happens. Yeah, you would never even cast the spell if that were the case. So
right. I guess that's why I never see it happen. Yeah.
But yeah, Washout's an interesting one. It's a mass bounce spell, obviously, and really I just wanted to put it in here to highlight the fact that this is one of the ways this deck has board wipes. Like that's definitely one of the weaknesses of Simic, right? It doesn't get true board wipes. Instead, it gets the bounce one. So obviously, if you've got a little extra, again, you want to break the budget, you're going to have your Cyclonic Rift. But really, we have to settle for these in budget land. We have to settle for something like Washout. But in this deck, those are actually fine, right? Washout, even if you have to name blue or green, is totally fine because we'll bounce a few of our things and then we'll just get them right back and get that extra value out of them. It's totally fine. And if you don't have to name those colors, then it's great as well. So Washout's actually a great card. Does a decent job. And like because you get to choose the color, a lot of times it's like, okay, I need to kill this person and before I like deal with these other people. So Washout, you can really target one person usually with that. It's like, okay, I'll name black so that all their stuff goes. I can swing with my big monsters. Black still hits some of these other permanents that are causing me problems. But it's not, as devastating as a Cyclonic Rift can be. So yeah, Washout's actually quite good in this deck.
Nice.
And real blink, real flicker comes in the form of a couple of cards in this deck. One we'll talk about later, one big one obviously, but this one is a good one too. Conjurer's Closet. 5 generic for an artifact that says at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So you just get a free blink at each of your end steps. So that's just it's just pure value, right? At that point, you're either going to do it to Zegana to draw more cards. You're going to do it to one of these other effects that will, hit a artifact or enchantment or something like that, or kill a creature, whatever. They're great.
Awesome. I found the other card I was thinking of goes in this section here. How do you feel about this card, Andy? Can you pull up Release to the Wind? It's a rare from Rivals of Ixalan. It's 2 and a blue for an instant. Exile target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may cast it without paying its mana cost. So it is a 3 mana blink right away, or it's 3 mana save your creature to be cast later. You can do this with Zegana and not put her back in the command zone, and then just cast her for free another time if the timing's right.
That's interesting. I feel like you probably just want like blink effects, because
you don't have to do this the same turn.
No, I know.
You can do this in response, right? So that you get to choose when your creature comes back, as long as it's not at instant speed. You still have to follow timing rules of the game.
Yeah. Most of the blink and flicker effects in this deck are repeatable, and they usually will sit on a permanent. And that was because green can get permanents back from the graveyard, which is nice, and they can often do it with blink effects.
Right.
With like it comes on ETB creatures, so that's one reason why I did that. So I wouldn't. There are actually very few instants or sorceries, I think, period, in the deck outside of like some ramp cards. So I think I'd be more likely to run a permanent that does this. Although, how good do you think this card is in general?
I don't know. I've never played with it yet, but I'm so intrigued by it. I think it's very good, because
I don't think it's very good. I think it might be okay in certain decks.
I mean, right. I guess that's what I'm going to put the caveat on. It's not a staple by any means, but I think depending on the deck, it can be a powerhouse. And I think this might be the deck. Like, you can, we're going to assume that most of the time you're going to want to use this on your own creatures, because you are going to want to cast them again for free. That's not something we want to give to our opponents. But it works as an instant speed way to rescue our commander from something, and it'll come back this one time without commander tax, because our card is exiled, and unless our opponent's decks are running those Eldrazi processors, it's safe. Like, nothing can touch it until you're ready to bring it back. And like, I can think of a lot of, if you have a lot of neat ETB abilities, this is going to be fantastic. It will replace itself in this deck, because whatever you blink, you're going to draw a bunch of cards off of.
Yeah, interesting.
I bet. I would assume. And then when would I use this on an opponent's creature? Or it's not on permanent. So like, if I do it on anything but their main phases, they won't be able to cast it again until the next trip around the table, which might be enough of a respite to like get through whatever crazy enchantment we need to get through or something. Yeah. I don't know. I think I want to run a few because I'm not sure, and I need to. The only way to find out is to try this thing out.
To me, the advantages it has over like a regular blink spell, like something like Ghostly Flicker, for example. Which is the same mana cost. You get to exile 2 artifacts, creatures, or lands, and then return them right away. Is that this saves things from like board wipes?
Yeah,
and that's kind of it.
It also, like, I mean,
because otherwise, Ghostly Flicker, for example, does the same thing for 2 things if you're trying to save it from removal or something. Am I wrong? Like, am I wrong? Like, the only thing this stops is it saves 1 thing from a board wipe.
It saves 1 thing from a board wipe.
Which is good. Like, this is not awful, especially when it's it's your commander or something. That's worth it.
But I think what we mustn't overlook is that it is a modal card. It's like either blink it or flicker it, right? Like, you have, that's sort of and we haven't seen a card like that before. That's why I'm so curious about it.
Oh, okay. So we should also quickly say, for like, I don't know about everyone else's meta, but we say blink. We don't use blink and flicker in interchangeable. A lot of people do.
Oh,
but to us, blink means that when it goes up and comes down. But it's what sucks though is that Magic can't decide on what's what either, because Ghostly Flicker to us is a blink effect. But the reason we say flicker is when it goes in and comes back at the end of on the end step is because that's what Flicker Wisp does. But then
right.
the actual card flicker is a blink effect.
No.
Remove exile target non-token permanent, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. Like the card flicker to us is blink, which is like, okay, we should probably just call that flicker and the other thing something else. I don't know.
Anyways, nomenclature
we digress.
aside,
We digress.
This card has secret modality to it, and I'm excited to explore it.
Yep, and there is something to be said for having an instant speed version of this.
And it can do opponent stuff too.
Yep,
right?
certainly it can. Yeah.
And I can envision a world where it's like, oh, this guy's planeswalker is about to ultimate, and we haven't been able to stop it. Sure, okay, I'll release to the wind it. So
the thing that you can't flicker, you can do it at instant speed, but you can't then cast the thing at instant speed, right?
Correct.
So that's
like
kind of a downside, kind of, but not. But then it has the upside of when you do it, if you can do it to your opponent's thing, and they can't do that. So yeah,
they can't get it back until the next time around the table. I don't know. I think this is legit. I'm gonna run a few. I'll let you know what I think.
Report back, please, because this is one of those cards that I would see in Rick's draft and just be like, I don't know when I would ever use this card in anything.
Yo, man, Chupacabra.
I suppose, yeah.
It depends. It's all on your ETBs. If you have a lot of ETBs, I think this card goes way up. Like if I already want blink or flicker cards, I'm adding this one to the mix.
All right, well, let's move on. We'll see what Sean reports back on that one, because I'm actually excited to hear about that.
Yes.
And if anyone else has any, if you guys have any experience with a release to the wind, let us know. I'd love to hear it. Okay, so let's talk about those actual ETB creatures. This is a good one, and it has lasting effect also. Rishkar, Pima Renegade, 2 and a green for an elf druid legendary creature, 2/2. When Rishkar enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So there you go. You just get to throw some counters around, and has the added ability of each creature you control with a counter on it has tap, add green to your mana pool. So this basically turns all of your creatures with +1/+1 counters into Llanowar Elves, which is awesome ramp, very good. So yeah, this is a newer card than when I built the deck. That I would certainly add into this deck for sure.
Certainly. Another ETB All-Star is Armorcraft Judge, 3 and a green for an elf artificer who starts as 3/3. When Armorcraft Judge enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. That's going to be a lot of them.
Yeah, and even if it is only like 2 or 3 for some reason, just remember you can blink this many times. You don't need it to, like, it might have a small impact early in the game when you play it, but then later when you can blink things and you've got more creatures out, this thing can get a lot better.
Let's blink. Thanks.
Right, and then we have Thragtusk. This is a cool classic. 4 and a green for a 5/3 creature. Is a beast. When Thragtusk enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life, and when Thragtusk leaves the battlefield, you create a 3/3 green beast creature token. So this is one of the few creatures that will give you benefits on leaving and entering. So this is Thragtusk is
very interesting.
Super all-star.
That it doesn't say die.
No, it doesn't. It says leaves, and
right.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who played Standard during this period knows the Thragtusk ability. But because we're blinking and flickering things, Thragtusk is unreal. Absolutely, like, it's kind of seems like it might not be that good, but do it either one, even just like once or twice. That's 2 more creatures you get on the battlefield if you did it twice, and you gain 10 life from Thragtusk coming back in. Like, that alone is kind of worth it, because there are games where you're just like, oh, I'm getting low on life, people are attacking me, and then you get your Thragtusk out and it's like bam bam bam, all of a sudden I'm back up to like 30-40 life, and that's just, sometimes that's enough to make you win the game, because now you have the time to catch back up to everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah, and then, this one's cool. This one's a lot of fun.
Ooh, Nessian Wild's Ravager. 4 green for a Hydra. 6/6. Slightly unusual that a Hydra does not have an X. However, this Hydra has Tribute 6, which means when this creature enters the battlefield, you want to ask whoever you're sort of teaming up with politically right now and say, hey, What are we going to do with this? Basically, you pick an opponent, and they have to either give you 6+1/+1 counters, aka make this a 12/12, or when Nessian Wild Ravager enters the battlefield, if tribute wasn't paid, you may have Nessian Wild's Ravager fight another target creature. So you go to your opponent, you'd be like, hey, don't pay the tribute, and then I'm gonna fight that other player's creature with this thing. So we got a deal on this thing, and they will say yes, and then you will either do the deal or stab them in the back.
It's crazy because Nessian Wild's Ravager has that like element of your opponent kind of gets to choose, which is usually kind of bad. But politically, it's a lot of fun. I put this card in there because I think it's a lot of fun, and I do think it is pretty devastating because if they say no, great, and you just get to kill a pretty sizable creature usually, and if not like a commander or a good utility creature or something like that. But if they say yes, like, oh great, you have a 12/12 that because of other things might have trample, might have unblockable, might have something like that, right, going on as well.
Yeah.
And also you're just always happy to have a massive beater in this deck because that means Zegana will be that much bigger and draw you that much more cards. So yeah, Nessian Wild's Ravager is a really great card in this deck. A lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah. So there you go. And look at that. Look at that synergy. We got that +1/+1 counters. We're running through all the deck. Armorcraft Judge, enter the battlefield, cares about +1/+1 counters and draws cards. Like it's crazy. There's so many cards that have this like holy trinity of Simic involved in it.
Simic does what Simic does better than any other guild does what they do.
Ooh.
I haven't thought about this too deeply, but like any other guild, whatever it does, like it's like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of cards that do that. But it seems like every card in Simic does exactly what you want to do on all angles, and it's an all-star on top.
Yeah, like I haven't had this deck in paper for a few years, like maybe like 2 years now, maybe even longer. And I still when the new sets come out, I still go, ooh, why am I excited about this card? It's like, it's not that good. And I'm like, oh, it's because of Zegana. Like, I still get excited about cards that would go in my Zegana deck that I don't even have anymore. Yeah. But I think that's going to be changed. I think I am going to put this deck back together. Nostalgia is back. You know what? This is the like, Dominaria is back. We have Masters 25. Like, this is, I think, the time for whatever your version of Magic nostalgia is to embrace it.
Yeah. Did I say here comes Zegana or here comes Galta?
I think you said here comes Zegana. That's what I heard.
Okay. I was thinking about Galta. I'm not sure what I said because I think Galta also goes very nicely in this deck if you happen to have it.
I think Galta would be really great.
No +1/+1 counters, but just like a free huge creature is pretty
gigantic. That 2-mana, 12/12 again? Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
That works.
Perfect.
Yeah, this deck and like Simic maybe in general, it accommodates itself so well. Like everything accommodates everything else. Like it wasn't hard to find cards that had all three synergies on them: ETB, drawing cards, and +1/+1 counters. It's just not hard to find them, which is makes this deck, even though like some of like more high powered metas might scoff at a deck like this, like it actually kind of demands to be taken seriously because of the sheer card advantage that it'll get, and then be able to just like in one turn drop a bunch of crazy stuff and give people a hard time. And like even if you are building this on a budget, it's running counter spells, it's running really efficient like ramp spells, and then like stuff like are we going to talk about this card in a sec? Hang on, I got to make sure I don't spoil it. Yeah, Gyre Sage is in this deck, which is an amazing ramp card that is so good in this deck. I should maybe put it as one of the stars. But anyways, we'll get to that. Speaking of which, let's get to the 3 stars of the deck. Let's talk about the best cards that are working here. I love this deck so much. This is where I discovered the card Psychosis Crawler, the number 3 star of the deck. 5 generic mana for an artifact. Horror, star. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in your hand. And whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses a life. So obviously this is just, this just takes players down and just kills players simply from card draw.
Oh boy.
Very, very good card in this deck. And also
Drop
ends
a
up being
Zegana.
very
Ugh.
large. Again, Zegana, like, largeness is like somehow a synergy in this deck, which it is. It just is.
How?
Right? Everything
This deck-
synergizes.
Yeah, man.
It's so great.
Simic, man.
Simic. It's all mutant. We're all a bunch of weird mutants. And we all work together. Anyways.
Great. Number 2 star of the deck is
Yeah, there we go.
Teamer Sabertooth. I don't have it up yet. Hang on.
Teamer Sabertooth, 2 and 2 green for a 4/3 cat that says 1 and a green, you may return another creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, Teamer Sabertooth gains indestructible until end of turn. I think this card is being I think this card was very underrated for a long time. I used to have it in a lot of decks, and I think now people are starting to understand how good Teamer Sabertooth is. It's just so hard to deal with, plus it has the ability of bouncing things, which is amazing, and it's only for 2 mana, which is not a lot. So yeah, indestructible is a powerful ability, man. Yeah, instant speed. Yeah, all you need is another creature. It's great. Teamer Sabertooth is definitely an all-star in this deck.
Yeah, so if you, again, I want to come back to this mana sink argument. If you're holding up mana for any reason, this is another option you have. It's like, oh, did you try to play a Wrath spell that destroys all creatures? Cool. I'll return as many key creatures of my own to my hand before that resolves, and Teamer Sabertooth will be indestructible to also survive the Wrath.
Yep. This is why you have to run Exile abilities, which we all know.
Yep. Number 1 star of the deck. This is a number 1 star of the format in many ways. Deadeye Navigator, 4 blue for a 5/5 spirit with Soul Bond. So the way Soul Bond is, when this card enters the battlefield, you get to team it up with another creature. You get to Soul Bond it. Or if it is not Soul Bonded and another creature enters, you also get to trigger the Soul Bond. So anytime it or another creature enters the battlefield, if it doesn't have a Soul Bond, if it doesn't have a soulmate, then it looks for
Yeah, exactly.
And whoever his soulmate is, you get to pay 1 and a blue to exile either of these creatures and then return it into the battlefield under your control, which will allow you to change the Soul Bond trigger, which will allow you to get ETB effects again, which will allow you to save Deadeye Navigator's life if people try to remove it, because they will, all kinds of stuff.
So the way you worded it there technically isn't right, but what it is they both get that ability. Not one creature can affect both, but whatever.
Yes,
you know that.
Yes. Both creatures can make themselves blink while they're soulmated. Yeah. And just as a PSA to everyone out there, the way to disrupt this is to kill Deadeye Navigator with the Soulbond trigger on the stack, so it does not have the ability.
Exactly. And all it takes is one activation of its ability. Like if it was soul bonded before you could get rid of it, right? So if something comes down, they've soul bonded. You're like, okay, well, can't do it now. But then later in the game, you've got these 2 soul bonded creatures. You're like, well, how the hell am I ever going to get rid of these things? Well, all you need is one instant speed removal spell, because, like Sean said, when they go to flicker their thing, or whatever, blink, flicker, whatever, as the thing comes back in, whether it's the Navigator or the other creature, the Soul Bond trigger goes on the stack, and then you just respond to that with the kill spell.
Yes, you have to let the one blink happen. You can't prevent it, but as it happens before Soul Bond is rebonded, bye-bye, Navigator.
Exactly. Now, obviously, the reason why a lot of people argue about Deadeye Navigator and banning and stuff is because, well, then all it takes is one counterspell or one anything else to save it, and then you're like, well, now we have to wait now it's even harder to kill it. But, like, that's kind of true for a lot of things. So, anyways. But Deadeye Navigator, definitely first star of the deck. Definitely, for all those reasons we just mentioned, it's so hard to deal with. It makes the other creatures so hard to deal with, plus the obvious synergies with ETB and stuff like that. Plus, sometimes it's a 4 mana 5/5. Like, that's not small. Or sorry, 6 mana.
That's not small. 5/5. That ain't small.
But a 5/5 is like, oh, okay, that's pretty big. Cool.
Yeah, with that kind of ability, you would expect it to be like a 2/2.
Like a 2/2, exactly. Like, yeah, no, it's a 5/5.
They gave it a sick body too.
Okay, so those are the 3 stars. There's a couple other cards that you could have put up there very easily, but those are the ones that really, really jam with the deck. Surprises and discoveries. Well, obviously, this is an older deck for me, so I'm very familiar with all the cards in it, and even the new ones. There weren't any real big discoveries, but there is one surprise I remember finding when playing this deck, and it's the synergy between Zamek Guildmage, which is the green-blue 2/2 elf wizard that says pay green and blue. This turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So that's something. But here's the real one. Green-blue, remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control, draw a card. So oftentimes in this deck, Zamek Guildmage is just going to play, say, 2 mana, draw a card, and like you can just take the +1/+1 counter from anything. It doesn't matter. However, when you're working with Protean Hydra, which is an X and green for a 0/0 Hydra that says Protean Hydra enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to Protean Hydra, prevent that damage and remove that many +1/+1 counters from it. But here's where the Zamek Guildmage comes in. Whenever a +1/+1 counter is removed from Protean Hydra, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it at the beginning of the next end step. So you can make Zamek Guildmage draw as many cards as you want, as long as you have the mana, obviously, and Protean Hydra. That's, if you had infinite mana, that would be an infinite combo. So it's for however much mana you have. There's also another card. Is it called Cytoplast Rootkin, I think?
Whoa, that is a card.
Yes, it is. Cytoplast Rootkin is 2 green. It's a graft creature. It has graft 4. When he comes into the battlefield, he puts +1/+1 counters on everything that has a +1/+1 counter on it already. And it says pay 2 generic, move a +1/+1 counter from target creature you control onto Cytoplast Rootkin. So you can get an infinitely large Cytoplast Rootkin as well as an infinitely large Protean Hydra if you have infinite mana. So they just get as big as the mana you have. So it's just a fun it's a combo that like is not going to necessarily win you the game, but it's just nice. I remember discovering this combo and being like, oh, cool.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think one oft made fun of card at the time?
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew it. Bioshift. Is Bioshift worth having in this deck? The answer is no.
Because if there's a deck for it, this is the one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I
no.
believe that this deck did start out with a Bioshift in it.
And you cut it.
I did cut it, yeah. Just because there's enough things that do it kind of already, and being able to instant speed move a bunch of counters isn't that good. Like it's like there are definitely situations where this could be a good card, but I just think they're just better. There's just better stuff to do.
I think you're right. I know,
right? I mean, you can include a Bioshift. It's not going to be awful, but there is going to be a lot of times where it's basically a dead card, which sucks.
Yeah.
Like if you have like, Fathom Mage out, that's pretty good, right? You can Bioshift onto Fathom Mage. That's great.
Draw
but that's
cards. Bioshift. You can Bioshift all but one away from Protean Hydra.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah. And that's kind of
you can attack with a bunch of like creatures, and then if some are blocked and some are not, you can move the counters to an unblocked one or a blocked one, whichever is better for you.
It would be interesting if it just let you move all counters around on any number of creatures.
Oh wow.
Like, that would be interesting. I'd maybe think about that.
Wow.
Right? Like really just completely reshuffle your counters. Maybe that's like too hard to keep track of or something. I don't know.
How would you? That'd be hard to rules.
Yeah,
template.
it's like it would. Yeah, move any number of +1/+1 counters from any creature you control onto any other number of creatures you control.
I think you'd have to say remove any number of +1/+1 counters from creatures you control. Then put that many +1/+1 counters on in any combination on. Yeah.
Well, anyways, this card is pretty bad, so it's not in here, and definitely was the joke of the set in Gate Crash because no one ever wanted this card. This is definitely. I don't know if do they still print cards that are like skill testers, because they definitely did back then.
You think that was the skill tester?
Yeah, for sure. Bioshift is a bad card. Well, how bad is this card? It's awful. But it looks like it could be good even in limited, but it never was.
I just don't agree with the term skill tester. I don't think they put cards that they like to trick people into thinking.
Well, they even said they did do that. So,
did they? Well, I'm
yeah. That's a thing that they like definitely did do, and I think they've moved away from it.
Yeah, that sounds like a bad
Everything
move.
I've listened to, I think they actually don't really print those cards anymore.
That only scares away new people, new
and I
players.
think it's why like some of the sets have been so good lately. Like everyone's
Because they don't have any on-purpose garbage cards. Yeah. Oh, let me guess. Your game gets better when you don't try to design garbage for it.
Oh yeah, you haven't included garbage in this one, so it's somehow better than the last one where you did include garbage.
Yeah.
Before we get to the budget report, let's talk about our friends over at Wizards Tower.
Old pals at WT. What's Wizard Tower up to these days?
Yeah, wizardtower.com. Always, you go check them out. Get those singles. Use I Love Brews. That's the coupon code these days. Get some singles. I've been ordering singles from Masters 25. That's what I've been spending my time doing. I did order a Protean Hulk, so you can look forward to having that in our meta now. I also ordered what else did I ordered something else silly from that set. I can't remember now, but that's a pretty silly card. I'm going to put it in Carador, just so you know, and it's only going to be there as a straight value engine, not really to do any crazy win the game instantly combo type stuff. So there you go.
Yep. Yeah, I recently put an order in just for some boulder cases. Some Ultimate Guard boulders.
Yeah, that's right. They have those too. You can get those shipped. That's not free shipping like the singles. If you have $15 or more, the singles are free to ship it within Canada. But if you if you order those boulders and stuff, they'll deliver those as well. It's great.
Great.
Cool. All right, budget report time.
Budget report. This is the part of the show where we take all of the cards and we put counters on them and we draw cards and we make them unblockable. And the one card that doesn't do all this, destroyed.
Leia was so weirded out by the beeping.
Oh.
When I did the beeping, my cat Leia was like, "What the hell? What are you doing?"
I've never heard you.
Yeah, she was really freaked out for a second. That was pretty funny.
It's kind of like meowing.
What is that? How do I make that noise? I want to do that. Yeah. Budget report. So we came in just under 50. Like I said, I basically had a deck list for this that I took out all the expensive cards and all the cards that I thought weren't any good anymore and then built it back up. So we kind of like took half the cards out and then put half the cards back in again. This deck started at over wasn't that expensive though. It was still pretty cheap. It was like $150, 160 maybe.
Hey man, there's just a lesson to all you Commander's Brew fans out there. If you're thinking about brewing a deck, brew it now, because a couple of years goes by, you've made money.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of our old decks, if you look back at them, are now like many times the price. Some of them even. But this one wasn't brewed for the show. Obviously, this one was just brewed by me, and it was around 100, a little bit under $200. But then we got it right down to 50, and I think it's except for maybe like 2 or 3 cards that I'll mention later, it's as effective easily, no question. So $49 and around 20 cents. The most expensive card in the deck is currently Chasm Skulker. 2 and a blue for a 1/1 that says whenever you draw a card, you put a +1/+1 counter on Chasm Skulker. Look at that synergy. And then when Chasm Skulker dies, you create X 1/1 blue squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Chasm Skulker. So little insurance there for board wipes. You'll be able to come right back at that blue player, or any player for that matter, usually for some pretty big gains. Like you'll usually have 10 or more cards on or counters on this guy. So Chasm Skulker was a big one for this deck for sure.
I just had an idea for another card. Next up,
next is Soul Ring, which technically, so it's about 280. Somehow this card keeps going up in price. Like you can find it for 250, 260, but anyways, we use MTG Goldfish and they said it was 280. So there are versions that are more expensive and so on, but obviously Soul Ring is obviously in there. So not counting Soul Ring, the next most expensive card is.
Next most expensive card, not counting Soul Ring, is Scavenging Ooze, which is still a decent deal, right? Scavenging Ooze, what is it? $250, $3, something like that, depending which version. There was a time when this was over 20.
I know, right?
because it was only in a Commander product.
And then they reprinted it most recently, I think, in Modern Masters 2017. So it's right back down to where it's nice and affordable for these types of decks. I love this card. It's got some synergy to it as well. It's anytime you can work that Graveyard Hate or one of those like key utility things into your deck and also somehow have it synergize even a little bit. I think you're laughing. So I think Scavenger Ooze is really great. And finally, the fourth most expensive card, technically, if you're not counting Soul Ring, is Progenitor Mimic for blue-green. It's the clone effect that at the beginning of your upkeep, if this creature isn't a token, create a token that's a copy of this creature. So it basically just keeps producing clones of the creature that you at first cloned. Very, very good. Nice for ETB abilities for your own creatures.
This card is the Progenitor Mimic is one of those cards that you must deal with.
Yeah.
As soon as possible.
Yeah. There's enough. Yeah, and this is the card I've always wanted to put in the deck that has 2 upkeeps. Remember that card that has 2 upkeeps? Like Progenitor Mimic is a card I want in that deck.
Yeah, big time.
This card's just over $2. This is another card that was way more expensive. I remember at the time, I pulled this in a draft, but like this card was like expensive when it first came out. It was a mythic. But yeah, now it's down to around $2. So I think it's worth it, honestly. I think this is a good card.
Big time.
It's a bit slow, but like Sean said, it has to be answered. So
you have to be answered it because like no matter what you put under it is going to generate value on value. Right? You never cast an emergency Progenitor Mimic on like an Ivy Lane Denizen. Yeah. Which, I mean, if you got 2 or 3 of those, it's like that's pretty phenomenal.
Kind of gets even really out of hand. But yes, yeah.
Eventually. But like, you throw this even on a Muldrifter, it's just like I can't let you draw 2 cards in addition every upkeep. Yeah. Like you have to deal with this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's take a look at another card I wanted to just quickly mention, and I won't get too deep on it. But if you're gonna have this deck, you need to have a Master Biomancer.
Yeah,
he's the one that for his power he put like whenever something comes in, he puts that many counters on it. So he starts as a 2/4, and he puts he'll put 2 +1/+1 counters on things that come in after him. But I mean, with Progenitor Mimic copying Master Biomancer, like it gets really out of hand. Things get wild. So anyways, you just have to have that card in there. It's great. Now let's talk about some things that are out of budget. What are some cards that are specifically quite good for this build that we would like to have but are just a little too expensive? Well, I'll tell you the first one that I had to cut, and I was sad about it because this is a generally good card, but in this deck, I did have it in this deck, and it is very good in this deck. It's Eternal Witness. 1 and 2 green for a 2/1. There was a hot second where we could brew with this card. Do you remember that? When it was like $3 or $4?
A hot second.
That's back up to 6, so it's a little harder to fit into brews these days. But obviously just a staple in Commander. And it's...
Yeah, it's these staples. These staples keep climbing.
When she enters the battlefield, you just return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So ETB, anything that even doesn't care about ETB, it's worth having Eternal Witness in there. But if you have some ETB, some bounce effects, obviously Eternal Witness gets out of hand. She's great.
Yep. And then another staple, Reliquary Tower, no maximum hand size. It's a land, so it doesn't affect your card count. Like you can kind of sneak lands that have spell type effects are sort of free in the sense that it doesn't take up where you would normally put a card in. You don't have to make a cut to put this in. You cut a forest or whatever. So they're free to cast, quote unquote. So, I mean, lands that do stuff are always going to be amazing. This one is no exception, and it's above $5.
And one that has come out since I've taken this deck apart is Thought Vessel, which is an artifact for 2 mana that says you have no maximum hand size, and you can tap it to add a colorless to your mana pool. This card surprisingly is at like $6.50, almost $7. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I kind of am because I don't know. But yeah, I guess because it's only in what's Commander Anthology?
That was that.
Oh, that's the multiple. Yes, okay, never mind. I know what it is. It's the one where they put out 4 decks. Yeah.
Yeah. It only ever came out in.
So it's only been out in that product or Commander 2015. So yeah, I guess the supply is pretty low on this card.
There's got to be a way to get more of those cards out into the ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. Like this would have been.
Like, would that be so bad in a regular set?
Yeah, or in a master set. I think you could easily throw this in a master set. It's a nice little mana rock.
Even
right?
not in a master set. Like, why not in a normal set?
Yeah, not
Why
just
not
in,
make
in
it
standard.
a 2-mana mana rock? They're giving us a 1-mana dork in Dominaria.
Oh, really?
So they've obviously lowered the bar. I mean, maybe they can't do both. Maybe they can't do a 2-mana mana rock plus a 1-mana dork in the same block, but it doesn't seem unreasonable. It doesn't give color mana. It can only be colorless mana, and most draft environments don't care about no maximum hand size.
Yeah, I would bet it's for you game designers out there. Think about that one. I wonder the impact this would have on a standard environment. The no maximum hand size, the 2 mana, the ramp. That's some fast ramp, but not the fastest. Like they print the 2 mana creature rampers at this, but not the artifacts usually. Interesting. All right. Well, anyways, having no maximum hand size in the deck is obviously very, very good when you're drawing a million cards. So, great. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it. That's the deck. We revisited Zegana. We kind of gave her a nice little update, a little facelift, if you will. And so you can check the deck out over on Tapped Out, or if you're in our Discord chat, you can just. Oh wait, no. Never mind. We posted those in there before, and I did not do it this time by accident. Sorry.
Right.
But yeah, if you want to get in on that Discord chat, which there's all kinds of fun chats going on, all kinds of wicked discussions about the show, about Jet Commander in general, about Magic in general sometimes, you can become a patron over at patreon.com.
Oh, it's such a supportive community, too. People are throwing up decks as like, hey, anyone got any ideas? And the ideas do flow.
That's great.
So feel free to join if you want, but just thanks for listening. If you're listening this far, that's great. Coming up, we got a Brew's news segment as usual, but I want to take one more second and pitch. April 3rd is when our Kickstarter launches, so we can bring you Commander's Brawl. It's a chance to get on the ground floor to help us produce a gameplay video series, a weekly gameplay video series with 4 human players playing with paper cards in plastic sleeves.
Yeah, that's right. And, on April 3rd, when the Kickstarter goes live, there will be some limited exclusive rewards that you can get in on. So the faster you get in, the better. And I believe... one of those is to actually be on the show and play in the game. So keep an eye out for that. April 3rd, it's coming. Until then, stick around. Brews News. We'll see you guys next week. Bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brews News. I'm Andy.
And I'm Sean.
And this week, we've got a very special movie review segment. It's Bruce and Bruce watching DVDs.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Bruce and Bruce Watching DVDs. This week, we dive into the waters with one of Steven Spielberg's original classics, Jaws. This is the movie that had people terrified of the water all across North America, including the bathtub on some occasions, and it's scored by John Williams in such a classic piece, just those 2 notes and you know you're scared of something. Da-da. Da 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 da. Ooh, spooky. What did you think of this one, Bruce?
I am thinking when I watch this movie, where I am from, we make movies about scary things, but this movie is about a fish. And Bruce, I am not used to seeing a fish. So it is scary simply to see a fish.
Well, yeah, I mean, that does make sense. It's scary to see a fish. But what about the gripping turns? Richard Dreyfuss's performance alone is fantastic.
I never take a bath. This is not because of Jaws, but it is because if you go into the field with you, where you have your ox and he is plowing your field with you, you must have a musk, or the ox will not respect you. You must carry your musk with pride.
Well, it's very interesting, Bruce, to say that you were scared to see the fish, because funny story, the mechanical shark broke down during filming, and you don't actually get to see the shark until the very end, which some would say is the reason it's so scary, because it's all in your mind.
Yes, and because it is a robot shark.
Okay,
This is scary to Bruce.
Yes.
That one can make a shark who is from the future.
Well, this is just a movie. So, Bruce, remember, but movies are not real, right? Remember that we talked about this. This is a movie. The robot shark was to make the movie. This wasn't in the movie.
But they had to make a real robot shark.
Yes, they did.
Where I am from, this is scary.
Well, you know what? I mean, technology that you don't understand probably seems magical. I think I read that somewhere.
It is magic to me.
Yes, it is a magical film. So magical, in fact, one of Spielberg's seminal pictures. I'm going to give it 5 shark's teeth out of 5.
And I like this movie as well. I give it 4 buckets of chum out of 6 oceans of robot sharks from the future.
Seems like a very tiny percentage, but I think I know you mean that you liked it.
I love it.
Wonderful. Well, stay tuned next week when we go into another piece of classic cinema with Bruce and Bruce watching DVDs. Really, you've never seen a fish before, huh?
I've never been. I've hardly been to water.
I didn't realize where you're from was so landlocked.
It's very landlocked. We have a mountain. We have a plain. Only plains.
Red and white.
Yes.
Ah.
Yes, red and white. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce and Bruce.
Another enlightening movie review from those two. I can't wait to see what they watch next.
And see if they actually both watched it.
All right, well, that's it. We're tapped out, and we'll pass the turn over to you guys. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you want to contact us, I'm at Sean Tabaris.
And I'm at Andy Holbone.
Send us an email at commandersbrew@gmail.com.
You can find out when we go live on Twitch if you follow us at twitch.tv.
And if you care to support us on Patreon, check us out at patreon.com.
And you can find our deck list on tappedout.net.
And if we forgot anything, commandersbrew.com.